Hello, my name is Matthew, also known as Slain Light. I am starting a tutorial on how to make a Minecraft mod for beta 1.7.3 using Fabric or Babric for Station API. So, to begin with, we're going to go ahead and look up Intellij, and we can just go to the first link here, and if you scroll on down to download, and then it says Idea Ultimate. You do not want Idea Ultimate. You want to scroll down to Idea Community Edition, and you can download it for your operating system. For me, that would be Linux, but it'll say probably Windows or Mac OS, and then press download and go through that install process on the Community Edition, okay? Once you get that installed, you should be greeted with this nice window here, which is saying, welcome to Intellij, right? So the first thing we're going to do before anything else is we're going to click on plugins on the left here, and we're going to look up Minecraft. And you see this Minecraft development plugin. We're going to press install on this, accept, wait for that to download, and restart. Okay, so we're back. Now the next step that we're going to do is we're going to click on clone repository, and we're going to click repository URL, and down here towards the bottom, or maybe down here, somewhere in this area, it'll say download git and install if you don't have it already, and if you do, then that's perfectly fine and we can continue. So once you click that, you should be good to go, and I'll have this URL in the description, so you just want to paste this right here and press clone. And I would just trust all projects and trust, and you can just select whatever version of Java you want, but personally I prefer 21, and I choose Tamarin. So let's see, yeah, Tamarin, Eclipse Tamarin right here, and download. So that should all be downloading and building. You click on this hammer here, and it'll show the process of it loading up, and we'll just go ahead and skip to when it's done. All right, after roughly 3 minutes, I went ahead and finished. So from here, we're going to click on this elephant on the right, Gradle, and under tasks and setup, we're going to double click setup mod. Okay. And right here, it's asking what our mod archive name should be. So it explains the usual format, which is snake case. Let's go ahead and I'm just going to name this tutorial mod. Personally, I'll just, one word is fine. And then Maven group. For me, this is my website would be com.perut. It's just your website backwards, or if you don't own a website, you can just do io.github. and then your typical username online. Okay, and then mod ID. I'm just going to use the same thing as my archive name. So basically, this is what it shows up as a file, and this is what it shows up in the mod menu. And there you go. So usually you want this mod ID to be also unique, so you don't want it to basically match with anybody else's. Okay, so we're pretty much done with that menu, so you can go and close that by pressing, like it's open with these, and you can close it, and it's gonna download some more things. I'm gonna let that happen really quick. All right, so now it's finally done there. And let's just quickly go ahead and expand our example mod and review the structure of how everything is set up. Okay, so we have this settings.gradle.kts. KTS is for Kotlin, basically certain formatting of Gradle. From my understanding, it's a delineation, but this is basically where we're downloading all of our sources from. So from Fabric MC and from Glass Launcher, and we also have Maven Central and Gradle plugin. And if we go ahead and take a look, so README, this is all written by you. You can actually go ahead and erase in here, and this is a tutorial mod, and you can write whatever you want. With this hash, it means it's a header, and then down here you can write as much as you want. 2 spaces on the end will make a new line, and you can then press like the picture, and you can see how it's formatted on GitHub. I wouldn't worry about this too much. You can look up what Markdown is on Google. If you look up Markdown GitHub, this will explain how this works. Then we have a license. So this will basically be for like what permissions you give other people to have towards your code. CC0 basically just means anyone can copy all of your code. There's no copyright on it. You're giving everyone permission to use it. And If you wanted to, you could 100%. Okay, so I found this website, choosealicense.com, and you just press license preferred, and you could read about the licenses. I personally use the MIT, and you would just copy it and put it in here, year 2025, and my name. So there you go. So that right there's the license. Um, these two files I wouldn't really worry about. They're just executables to run Gradle, and Gradle is our like build tool, so it'll build Minecraft for us, build our mod for us, things like that. And then here's Gradle.properties. So this is basically like all of the variables that are being used for our mod setup, like what mod version are we on, and what version of Station API are we using, and all of our other dependencies. And Minecraft version, this will probably never change considering you're writing a mod for beta 1.7.3, but you know, it's there. And then we can go to build Gradle KTS. So this is the like really granular. We're getting into how everything is being built. And so we're basically importing some plugins. We're targeting Java 17. So a ton of this stuff is basically perfectly fine as is. So you don't have to worry about it. But basically, let's just say we want to add another mod. It would be done right here. You just copy this and then replace this part with something that points to another mod. But we aren't doing that because the defaults are perfectly good. And the git ignore, we don't have to change anything in here, but this is basically when you share your code online, this will ignore these files, which are all just like temporary local files. And you can see these orange ones here. These are all just ignored because they don't need to be shared. Okay, and then we have this run folder. When you run the game, your world and all of your settings will go into here. Also is going to be ignored, as you can see in the git ignore. So we don't have to worry about that. And Gradle, this is again related to that build toolchain. So we've now looked at the top level directory, and we're going to go into a further step down into the source code. So in here we have main, which contains resources in Java. So basically all of the code that you're going to write is going to sit in Java, and all of the resources, pictures, and like textures and sounds and all that are going to sit in resources, as well as like language files and things like that. So I'm going to right click and refresh, reload from disk is what I'm looking for. And you can see, yeah, it got renamed to tutorial. In fact, I'm going to reload this whole thing from disk because I know some stuff has been moved around. So you can see that our Maven name is here, and then also our like website. If we go into the settings up here with these three dots, and we go into appearance, and we uncheck compact middle packages, you can see it's actually just a bunch of folders inside of each other. And I would also actually delete this old one, Net Class Launcher, because we aren't using it anymore. And we have the lang file, and we have this icon. So this is the icon that'll show up in game. This fabric mod JSON. So all of this stuff in the resources is related to what we see in the game. This icon's for mod menu, and this is for like the title of blocks and things like that in English, in US English, and we can add more language files, but the support on that in beta 1.7.3 is a little spotty, so English is just perfectly fine, I think. But we can go into fabric mod JSON, and you can see a lot of this stuff hasn't been filled in, but the ID at least has. And we'll go ahead and change the name. For example, we'll say name tutorial mod, right? And author, I think that's a pretty good one too. I'm gonna put my in-game name and probably a description too. I would say that these ones are the main ones that you probably want to change. So this is a mod to help people begin making mods. There you go. And you can add a web page here. It'll pop up in mod menu. That's the only place where it really pops up. I personally just remove it because I don't think that that's necessary. And I would also make sure that your license is accurate to what you ended up deciding on putting in here. If you wanted it to be all rights reserved, MIT, GNU, you know, whatever. And that's pretty much the gist of all that needs to be in here. And we can take a look at events and mixins. So we're going to come to this later. We'll just leave it as is, and then init listener. This is just how we get the mod name, and it'll print the mod name. This is server init. Yeah, so this is this will work. All right, so let's go ahead and get our hands dirty. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and demonstrate how easy it is to directly change Minecraft code. Usually you wouldn't use mixins, which is what we're going to use to change Minecraft code. But in this case, it's very important to know how to use them because in beta, you almost always use them. So we're going to go and have a quick crash course on that. So in this mixin folder, we're going to create a new Java class, and we're going to inject into title screen. And the convention is that you put the class name and then mixin on the end of what you're changing. So we're going to create that class. And in here, we're going to create a new line and mixin into title screen dot class. And you can see it's in Minecraft GUI screen, title screen. So we also have this yellow squiggly underline, and we can hover over or press Alt Enter. Either way, we'll have this add to mixin config client side. We'll click on that, and it's no longer yellow squiggly. And we can see in this tutorial mixins JSON that suddenly it pops up here. Before it looked like this, and now it added it right here. And we know that this entire file is being used because tutorial mixins is actually referenced in Fabric Mod JSON right here. So that's perfectly good to go. So now we know that this is being used by our mod and going to be loaded by Fabric. So the question is, how do we change the splash text in Minecraft? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that is to decompile the title screen code. So if we hold Control and then click on title screen, it'll have a pop-up that says to accept the terms of the decompiler, and I would just go and press accept, and then you'll be put onto this page and see all of this. And I would scroll down, and you can see we have this variable splash text missing now, and you can see that in the title screen constructor that we're loading from this text file in UTF-8, and we are reading it, and then we're adding it to this array list, and then we just grab a random item and we use that as a splash text. And then if we scroll down a little further, we can see in this init class that, oh, depending on what day it is, we can change it so that it's happy birthday to various people, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, things like this. So the splash text would be special in certain cases. And then you can also see these are the buttons for the game. And we also are checking if you're a Minecraft session. So this is basically if you're logged in as a valid user, then allow multiplayer. But none of this really matters because right here we just want to add some code to say splash text means something else. But you can see if I try to type, it says file is read only. So how in the world do we inject some code to be at the end of init? Well, fortunately for you, there is this fancy at inject call that we can use to inject code anywhere. And where do we want to inject it? Well, we want to inject it inside of a method, and that method is called init because that's where all the splash text custom code is. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So method is init, and then at equals at, and then tail. So we want to inject it at the tail. So generally, I just do void, and I'll just say what I'm trying to do. And what I'm trying to basically do is I'm trying to set splash text. Actually, this is a bad convention because this would make it sound like it's setting it like we're using it to set it, but it's actually configuring. So I guess yeah, configuring splash text. There you go. And we can do brackets, and you can see how this is red underlined. It's because the method should have a certain signature to match the original method, and we can just hover over or press Alt Enter and press fix method signature. And all that changed here is this callback info, which if this was callback info returnable, it would be CIR, and you could do CIR dot get return value. So if you're at the tail, you can get what it was going to return, or like at return, you can get what it was going to return, and you could change it to something else by setting the return value. But in this case, that is not what we're doing because we just have callback info regular. And in this case, all that we have is the name of the method, if it's cancelable, and if it's been canceled. So all of that stuff could be useful in some scenario, but it's not in ours because we don't need it. But all we have to do now is go ahead and type in splash text. And when I select this, it actually shadows, which means we're basically having a copy of it for ourselves to manipulate. And when we change it, the original one will also change. But we just shadowed that original variable that we have right here. And these are basically in sync. And we can go ahead and do equals and then welcome to the tutorial. And you can write whatever text you want in here. So now we're going to go ahead and run the game for the very first time. And how we are going to do that is up here next to this play button, we're going to press down and oh, look, we do not have anything at all right here. So how we will solve that is by closing and reopening this project. So I'm going to press close project and then it'll pop this up and we're going to click on it again and it'll reopen. Oh, Minecraft client, Minecraft server, we're here, we're good to go. So we will go ahead and press play on Minecraft client. All right, so that's compiled and loaded. And now, welcome to the tutorial. Incredible. So that is a great start, and we're going to go ahead and go from there. But you understand now that this splash text is now configured here because we put at the end of init where it basically allowed for custom text to be. And you can see even down here, things can be changed down here as well. And we'll get back onto, like, let's just say I wanted to change this text. Well, that's inside of the method. There's a bunch of advanced mixin stuff, but generally, if you just want to add something quick, this inject is the most elegant implementation of mixins. So there you go. There's your very first mixin. All right, so I think it is time for us to create a block. So in events init, I am going to, so this is in the initialization of Minecraft. We only make Minecraft blocks one time, and it's at the very start of the game. So we're going to right click on init because like eventually there's other events that happen in the game when they happen, and that'll be like gameplay or something along those lines. But again, the blocks at the very beginning. So we're going to go ahead and create a new class, and we're going to do block listener. Okay, and in block listener, we're going to do very similarly to what's going on here in init listener. We are going to, let me go ahead and clean this up a little bit. We're going to take this namespace and we're going to copy this and put it inside of here. And the other thing we're going to do is, you see how it says private static void? What we're going to do is very similarly, we're going to make sure that we have a static void just like this. Because if it's not public, it'll have some issues. And instead of server init, it's going to be block init. And instead of init event, it's going to be block, no, block event, block registry event. That's what I'm looking for. So we'll just do, how about register blocks? I feel like this is the use of English that I'm looking for. All right, so in here, we're going to first create a variable, and that variable is going to be public static block, hey, it's going to be hey bale. Okay, and this hey bale is equal to new, and we'll just do template block for now, and this is going to be namespace dot id, and then hey underscore bale, and then I also, and this is asking for also a material here, so I'm going to go ahead and give it the material of leaves, because leaves is the same material that dirt is made out of, and I like that noise, so that's what we're going to go with. And these are the only two essentials for this template block, but now we also want to make sure that this is also template block, and there you go. So this is really all that's necessary, but I would say that some also very important ones is to set the translation key, and we can just go ahead and copy this again, and this is going to be used for translation. Let's see, what's the issue here? Okay, so it turns out that block was perfectly fine. So this is the J Orbis block, and what we want is, so let me explain exactly what just happened. So when I imported block, I pressed import class. Oh, okay, now it fixes it, but basically this J Orbis block, we don't want that, so I'm going to erase that, and I'm going to re-import, and just make sure when you import it says net Minecraft block, and you see how it recommends this one too. We don't want that, we just want the block one, okay? And that fixes all of our errors. Okay, so to continue, So really you just need the translation key, but I'm also going to go ahead and set the sound group to be similar to the dirt. So it's going to be block.dirt sound group. And I'm also going to make it so that it doesn't break instantly by setting its hardness. And also, this is for TNT resistance. I'm going to set it to just regular resistance. Okay, and that is just a bunch of details about the hay bale. And the only thing I want to really do before we go ahead and test it out is I want to go to enuslang, and you can do tile.at and then the name that we just gave it .name equals and then hay bale. So there you go. And there's a couple other things that we will do in a second, but first let's run it and make sure that our hay bale comes up at all. Okay, so let's go ahead and create our first world. All right, and we can go ahead and go to the end of the blocks and maybe, oh, okay. So here we just ran into a very classical issue. We have block listener, but you see how block listener is unused. We just want to copy block listener, go to fabric mod JSON, and in here you see how we have event bus. A block is going to be shared between both the client and the server, so it should be here in the top one. And we'll go all the way down to block listener. So it should look something like this based off of what you had before. We have block listener now. And now with that, let's see what the issue is. Non-public method. So let's go ahead and go back into block listener, and instead of private, we're going to make it public. I assume that init listener is doing some shenanigans right here. Yeah, this shenanigan right here. I might actually go ahead and copy that. Let's see if that works. I'm extremely curious, as this is a learning experience for me as well. So I guess we will see. Lovely. Yeah, so apparently you can make that private if you use that fancy trick. And we go back into the world, go to the end of the blocks. Hay bale from the tutorial mod. Wow, I wonder who made the tutorial mod. So I'm going to change this into cheat mode. Click here, and our dirt sounding block. So there you go. But it has no texture, it just has a name because we gave it a name. But let's go ahead and get it a texture now. So there's two different ways to give it a texture. And one of those ways is to basically load into Minecraft, into the Atlas file, a texture directly and use it in code. The other way is what we call block states, which is how modern is done if you ever modded modern. But for simple blocks like this, it's just one full block. I wouldn't really mess with a block state, but we will come back to block states at a later time. But now we're going to create a new event. Actually, let's go ahead and first populate our assets with some files so that we can load the textures. So we're going to go into Station API, and we're going to create a new directory, and this directory is going to be called textures. And in textures, we're going to create a new directory for block. Now there can be also another directory for items, but we aren't quite there yet. So we're going to right click on blocks and go open in, and then terminal. So in this terminal, in the description, I have given a command to paste, and we just right click and paste that here and press enter. And after that, you can see in block, we have hay block side and hay block top. And just really quick as an additional measure, we're going to go all the way up. So instead of assets, we're going to go into resources, right click, new directory. And it's going to be data, Minecraft, station API, tags. This one's a long one. I have to quickly check my notes. Tags, blocks, mineable. All right. So that is the number of folders we just created. And then at this bottom one, what we're going to do is we're going to right click and new file and ho.json. So this will work for any block, but basically this makes it so that you can mine quicker with a certain tool. And for if you're copying like a stone material block, or it may be, here, let me quickly just see how this one works. If I did dot requires, okay, tool. No, I think here, what we're going to do is we're actually go into block and we're going to see what stone does. Stone going to copy it in case sensitive. And let's see, stone, set hardness, set sound group, set translation key. Yeah, I think that in set stone block, yeah, this material stone is what determines it, but this makes it so it's necessary to have a pickaxe, or just the effective tool. And in here, you just got to make sure that if it's made of stone, you want to have a mineable pickaxe and put the block in there. But for now, this will work for our hoe. You can mine it with your hand, or you can mine it even quicker with a hoe. So in here, we're going to do in the curly braces values, and it's going to be the mod ID, which in our case is tutorial, and then hey underscore bale. So that goes ahead and adds that. We have our texture, we have our mineable with the hoe. So let's go ahead and get the code to hook up with this information. So this one will work automatically thanks to Station API, but these textures we have to program to line into it. So in it, we're going to create a new package, and that package is going to be called client. And in client, we're going to create a new Java class, and it's going to be texture listener. And something else that we're going to need to do is in tutorial, we're going to create a new package block, and in block, we're going to create a new Java class, hey bale. Okay, that'll work. Extends template block, and you can just press Alt Enter and just make sure you choose identifier and material. Okay, and we can actually remove this material part because we know that the material we want is leaves, and we'll just take the identifier. And in here, in the block listener, instead of using template block, we need to make sure to use our new hey bale. And just for the sake of clarity, I'm going to rename it hey bale block by pressing Shift F6, and this class becomes hey bale block. And we'll erase this as well, and that way this doesn't get mixed up with this. Okay. And actually, even further yet, I'm going to rename this to all caps hey bale, and that way it really doesn't get mixed up. Okay, and again, with Shift F6, that's how I did that. So, in hey bale block, we're going to go ahead and create a get texture from the side. And right now we'll just use the super because we're going to come back to this, but we're also at the very top, we're going to make a public static int hey block side, and we're also going to make one for the top. So static makes it so that all versions of this hey bale block will have access to these same variables, but we need this to be stored somewhere while the game runs, so this is going to be our storage. And then in client and the texture listener, probably the first thing that we're going to want to do is copy the same structure as previously. So we're going to make it so the entry point listener has access again, and we're also going to copy this format of registering. And we probably also, yeah, we're probably going to want that mod ID as well. So first of all, let's rename this register textures, and then it's going to be a texture register event. Okay. And then we probably want the mod ID as well, or the namespace. So let's paste that here. And that's pretty much all we need to get started. And in here, we're going to do expandable atlas terrain equals atlases dot get terrain. Okay. And we're going to reach into that hey bale block from earlier and do hey bale side and top. But let's start with the side. And we're going to do terrain dot get texture namespace.id, and this is going to reach, so this namespace.id, when you're doing accessing like resources, this will, since it's an asset, this will automatically go into our named, basically our namespace, which is tutorial in this case, and then I'll go into textures. So since we're going into this textures file, get texture, it all pretty much lines up. And then now that we're in this folder, basically through this get texture and namespace ID, in here we're going to go into block, and we're going to go to hey block side, but we aren't done just yet. Dot index. So index is the number that correlates to this texture inside of the atlas. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but but you can ChatGPT that you know how it's an atlas index works, or you can watch a video. I don't know, but we're going to copy that again, and instead of the side, now we're doing the top. So there we go. We just updated those textures inside of the hey bale block class. Okay, so the only other thing that I want to do before we continue is that this texture listener needs to also go into our fabric mod JSON, but a texture only exists on the client, so we're going to make sure that it is only called on the client. So events init client. Okay, so this is where we have that. So texture listener, this is now called. You can see this is no longer gray, so that's how we know it's being used. And this event listener is basically being shown to it by this, and hopefully that should work just fine. So now in Hey Bale block, this get texture, we want to at least use one of these because right now we're just using that default texture of 0, and it's going to use whatever default texture you gave it. Yeah, I think there's a way to set the texture. Yeah, texture ID equals, and you can make it 1, which would make it stone, I believe. This would have to be afterwards, but we are not using that. Or we could do texture ID equals, because you see this get texture is just texture ID. So we could set that number, but we don't need that number because we have these two numbers to go off of. So we're going to go ahead and return, basically, if the side is equal to the bottom or the top, then we're going to return. So you can like look into which number corresponds to what side, but 0 and 1 is top and bottom. But hey block side, hey block top, that is what I was trying to do. And then in all other cases, we'll return hey block side. All right, so now we have a texture, and this ho code will work. And hopefully that's all we need for our block. Let's see if it works. Aha, it seems that we have got an error. All right, after some research, I figured out that it's because instead of get texture, it's add texture. What a silly mistake, but that's okay. All right, and with that, we're in, and our hay bale. Wow, look at that. And let's just make sure that our hoe also is able to mine it quicker. That is significantly quicker. Wow. And there you go. So what we're going to quickly just run through really quick is adding another block, but this time it's going to be a different type of block. And in here, we're just going to do hey bale underscore stairs. And this is just a refresher for the use case. Hey bale stairs again equals new, and then this one we're going to do template stairs block, and we're going to base it off of actually we're first going to do namespace dot id, and then hey bale stairs, and then comma. The block that we're basing it off of is hey bale, which it'll import the texture from just fine, and then dot dot set translation key, and then we just want to make sure to use that same exact thing, and everything else will also get copied. So that is all we really need. So hey bale stairs. Remember that we have to go into the lang file and give it a name. So I will go ahead and do that. Hey bale stairs. Hey bale underscore stairs. All right. And the only other thing that we really have to do is inside of ho. Let's go and duplicate, and it's going to be again hey bale stairs. All right. So with just those few changes running through it, we can go ahead and launch the game. All right, and in the game, we can open the world, and let's go look at the end again. Hay bale stairs. And you can see, voila, we got some hay bale stairs. And if we went with a hoe, it drops hay bales because in this version, if you mine stairs, it'll just give you the base block. So there you go. That is how we add just a couple of very basic blocks to the game. Alright, so we are back now with the advanced section. So we're actually going to go ahead and close this project if you've been working with me, or if you've just skipped to this part, that's also perfectly acceptable and fine. Just go ahead and we're going to start from the beginning, and we're going to clone repository. Just paste the link in the description again, which is Station API example mod. And this time, instead of just leaving it default, I'm going to name this one bees, because we're going to add beehives and honey bottles and things like that. So we're going to go ahead and clone. And this is more so for people who have modded beta 1.7.3 before, or just in general, you're okay with getting kind of a more heavy overview. And we're going to go over all the things that we did, sort of, except at a much faster pace. Okay, so I'm just going to rename our README bmod. And you can see that our build has finished already, probably because we've configured a mod previously. If you haven't, it'll probably take about 3 minutes. Then go to our elephant, go to tasks, setup, and setup mod. All right. So mod archive name, I'm going to name it bees. Maven group, for me, again, com per root. You can make it what you want, or just follow the default. And then mod ID, bees once again. All right, so in bees source Java. So I'm going to just extend all of these. And if this isn't updated, just right click and reload disk. And I'm going to delete this netclass launcher folder. And we're pretty much back to where we started. So we're going to go ahead and leave the defaults here, even though we could change it. And in init, we're going to right click and create a new class. And this is going to be a block listener once again. And just like last time, we're going to go to init listener and basically copy this usage that we have going on here. Go back into block listener. The only real difference is that we don't need a logger because we already have one. And in here, I'm going to do, instead of server init, register blocks, and then block registry event. And instead of logging anything, we're going to go ahead and create the beehive. But first of all, before we do that, we need to make the variable where it's going to be stored. So we have public static block and then beehive. All right, and I'm going to import block, and it's going to be Minecraft block, not the JOrbis one, but Minecraft. And then in here, we're going to do beehive is equal to new, and then we'll just do template block and namespace dot id beehive. And we'll also go and make it a material of wood because this is going to be a man-made beehive. Okay, and then we're going to set the translation key similarly to before. We're going to just copy this namespace and paste it here. And then we're also going to set the sound group to also be of wood, similar to the material. And then let's set its hardness. Let's also set its resistance. I'm just going to just make it a very high resistance. My bad, resistance. And that should be good to go. So there's our beehive block. The other thing we have to do is, this is currently grayed out, so let's go ahead and copy block listener, go into our fabric mod JSON, and then in here, let's go ahead and change this to bees mod. Let's change the description. A mod all about bees. Author, Slain Light, or for you, you can put your name here. And again, I'm just going to remove the contact because these aren't really relevant to us. The license, I'm just going to keep it CC0 because it really doesn't matter. As long as you don't care about people stealing your code. And in here, we're going to go ahead and add our next listener, which is the block listener. All right, cool. So here we go. So this register blocks will now be called. And let's go ahead and see, oh, our start Minecraft isn't here again. Again, all you have to do is go up here into file and close project and then go and reopen it. And then here we go, launch Minecraft. All right, now that we have Minecraft launched, let's create a new world. And let's see our gorgeous unnamed beehive is here. And I'm just going to turn back on into cheat mode, give myself a beehive, and place it down. And you can hear that it sounds like wood. And there you go. So let's go ahead and get this a texture. And we're going to do this using block states. So block states are a somewhat complicated topic, and we're going to actually start with a pretty complex block state, but we can also do a very simple block state. So just for the sake of really having the breadth of a really complicated block state, we're going to go ahead and create a new. Okay, so let's start setting up these asset files for the block state. So this is the modern way of doing it, like in 1.21.5 and all the new versions. And Station API basically supports that way. So it makes it pretty cross-compatible, but it's also just very convenient to use. So let's first of all go ahead and give it a texture name or a lang file. So we know that this add is going to be replaced with bees. And then the actual name of the block is beehive dot name is equal to, and we're going to name it beehive. Pretty straightforward. Okay, from here we're going to go ahead and create a new folder in Station API, and this one's going to be block states. We're also going to want a folder for models. We're also going to want a folder for textures. So in each one of these, except for block states, I guess, so we're going to create a new directory in models, which is going to be called block, and a new one in textures as well that's going to be called block. So let me go ahead and explain the structure of these. Block state is basically, let's just say that there was like a variable. For example, in Redstone, you have powered 15 all the way down to powered 0. And then in here, we could basically say, okay, if we're at 15, we're going to use a model that has a bright red. And if we're at 0, we're going to use one that's really dark. Okay, so that's the idea. But we're going to, for now, create a block state for bhive by just creating a file in here, which is going to be bhive.json. And in here, all we're going to do is we're going to do the variance. So in these curly braces, variance, and then there's multiple variants, but in this case, we just have the everything case, which is just empty curly braces. But hypothetically, it'd be like power equals 15 in theory, right? But for now, we're just going to do everything. And in all of these cases, in this case, no matter what the variables are, we're going to go ahead and refer to a model in here that's going to be called model. So we're referencing, first of all, this model folder. And then in here, it's going to be block. Well, we first have to understand. So you could do like a Minecraft, like you could do Minecraft referencing to Minecraft. So like Minecraft colon model. But in our case, we're referencing our own mod. So bees colon block / bhive. So this JSON doesn't exist for the model yet. So let's go ahead and create it. bhive.json, which is what's being referenced in block states. And then in this model, we're going to do another set of curly braces. And just for now, we're going to do parent colon and then Minecraft colon block / cube _ all. So this is a pre-built parent type of the block model, and you can Google what other types there are and replace it. But this will work for our purposes right this moment. And then after that, we're going to do textures. So the textures that are going to be used within this like type, and then curly braces. And we're just going to do for all the faces on this block, we're going to use a specific texture. And this texture is going to be in our bees resources in our textures folder, which is being set here. So we know it's in this mod and we know it's in textures. And then now we need to say that it's in the block folder. And inside of this block folder, we don't have anything yet. But what we can do is right click and open in terminal. And I'll have this in the description, but I'm going to paste this and press enter. And it's going to go ahead and download all of the textures we need. And let's quickly take a small peek. Now we have bee textures. You can see the front of it, the bhive. And so now in this texture file, or I guess we're referring to a texture file from our block model. And in here, we're just going to refer to bhive end. Let's go ahead and see what that looks like. All right. So in the world here, you can see that our bhive block, it shows up correctly here, but when it's in the item form, it doesn't quite work. And that's because we never actually said what it should look like as an item. And you can see our translation key is also working. So let's go ahead and go back into our editor, and let's go ahead and add another model, and this model directory that it's going to first be in is going to be an item. So what your code does by using it, when you're basically saying that there's going to be a template block with this name in the bees namespace, which is found by this, so this is basically saying bees colon bhive, that is telling it, look in bees, look at its block state, and then it follows the chain. So this block state says this model, and this model says this texture. So there's also a secondary thing that's happening at the same time, which is an item. And that's going to automatically look in this item model directory. So if we made an item, like we're making a block here, but if we just made an item, it would only look in here. And block states are exclusive to blocks, obviously. So in this item directory, we're going to create a new file, and this is going to be bhive.json once again. And inside of this, all we have to do is say, hey, this is just a block. So what we're going to do is we're going to say the parent of this is that block, and we want it to just look like a block. But in theory, if you wanted to, you could change this to, and you can look up an item model and how they work for Minecraft. You could change this so that, like, for a bed, you don't actually want the block model. You want that bed texture, the 2D texture, in this older version of Minecraft. And that's a very common thing with more complex models. There will be a picture of a 2D image instead of a 3D block. But in this case, we just have a simple block, and we're just going to go ahead and refer to, so this is referring to the parent, and we are already in this model area, so it knows we're talking about a model, and we're looking in the bees mod all the way into block, and then beehive again. So we can just use beehive. Let's go ahead and take a look at that as well. All right, and now you can see that when I throw these on the ground that they look like the model that we set up earlier. But aren't you starting to think that this model looks really weird? It's not really what we're used to. Let's make this look like a proper beehive. So what we're going to do is, we know that in here, this is for the different variants, and we are only focusing on making the one variant look good. So we're going to take it a step further and look inside this model area, and you can see, oh wow, there's really, this is where we're saying that all the sides should look like this one texture. So how about we change it to a different type, and this type is called orientable with bottom. And the types of textures that are being used in this top one are basically, we're going to use bottom, and we're going to duplicate this a few times just to make this a little easier on me, add some commas on the end. So we have the top and the bottom are both of the beehive end. Now the side, as you can see, we have a specific side texture, so we're going to go ahead and say side, and then we also have particle. We have the bottom, front, side, and top. So bottom, okay, so we forgot the front, so let's go ahead and make the front as well. And just like that, so you can see front, side, and front honey is going to be used later, but and ends. So all of these are being used. I'm actually going to change the particle to the side, because usually the particles will come out of the side when you're mining it, and that looks pretty good to me. So let's go ahead and run the game again and see if this JSON works. All right, and you can see, wow, look at that. We can see the front of it and the top of it, and I presume the bottom's also working. I mean, we can quickly take a look. Yes, the bottom is also working. So now the question is, okay, it's always facing this side, even if I place it this direction. So how do I get it to rotate to look at me? Well, you've faced a classical thing where you have the same block and you want it to look different based off of a certain thing, like where you placed it from. Insert variables, insert direction variable that can be stored when you place the block. And how do we store it? Well, block states, what we've been talking about this whole entire time, the whole reason for having this. And what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to create a new directory in bees for blocks. I'm just going to name it, let's name it blocks plural. Shift F6 to rename. And then new Java class. And I'm going to do a beehive block. And I'm going to extend template block. And Alt Enter, and I'm going to choose the one that's identifier and material. Okay. And I'm going to erase this material part because I know that the material I want it to be is always out of wood. And all we have to do is make sure that this isn't gray anymore by using it. The gray is basically saying, hey, this is not being used, probably something you want to use considering you're writing the code for it, which is true. So I'm going to go ahead and do beehive block, import it by pressing Alt Enter, and now the material is actually built into it, and we should be good to go. Now this beehive block is being used to create the beehive. So there is a lot of things that we're about to be doing in this beehive block. One of these things is that we're going to create these variables that are specific to the block. So let's go ahead and we're going to do a direction property. And this is going to be called facing. And then we're also going to do a public static final int property. And we're going to call this honey level. And this is how much honey is inside of that beehive block. So in here, we're going to make a static block. And we're going to set facing equals to properties.facing. And we can also do honey level is equal to properties.honey level. But it's like, okay, well, how does it know honey level? Well, that's because in Station API, we're just copying all of the default in properties and direction properties that are in the modern versions for compatibility's sake. But let's talk about how can we recreate this on our own. So if we actually control click on honey level, you can see, oh, it's just an int property of honey underscore level and a maximum. So as long as we use the same exact name and keep these properties the same, it'll function exactly the same. So we're going to go back and we're just going to quickly show how to do that in property.of, and we're going to use the same exact name, a minimum and a maximum set. And just something important to note is that when you're creating these properties here, that each one of these has a number of permutations and then they combine with each other. So this has 4 different permutations and this one has 5. And in this case, that means that there's actually 20 different types of blocks that are possible. So you could have each one of those have a different texture. And these all have to be loaded into memory. And I think that it's something crazy like 255, that's the maximum. And past this, it won't work anymore. The game will crash, and also you don't even want to get close to it because the memory will just fill up so completely. But basically, this would work for anything. So you could like rename this to like energy level and energy level. Although I wouldn't use energy, I would use probably like a proper energy API. But you could pretty much do anything. Like let's just say um, like a flower level, right? You throw in a number of flowers into a block by right-clicking with a flower, and more flowers will pop up on the top of it. Something along those lines. It'll change what the block looks like using block states. I would go ahead and go on to the Fabric Wiki and read more about how block states work, and you can get a general idea of how it works because it works exactly like it does in Modern. So that Fabric Wiki for Modern will work wonders for your understanding. But okay, so for now, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and actually add these to the block. So we need to add override append properties, and this is telling Minecraft, hey, this block has these different attributes to it that are going to show up in the JSON, and we just have facing and honey level. And hypothetically, if we had another one, we just do comma and add another one, but we just have these two. But you can just keep adding commas and adding into that. And something else that's important is that there's a default state that you have to set up. So let's just say that we place the beehive. How does it know what it should be by default? So we're going to go ahead and get the state manager and get default state and add some properties to facing. Usually just direction north will suffice. And then we're also going to go ahead and set the honey level to 0. All right. But now the question is, how in the world does the game know when we place it what direction we want it to face? So we do this by going ahead and using get placement state. So this is provided by Station API, not vanilla beta 1.7.3, because yeah, I don't think this existed before, but that's perfectly fine. So what we can do is we can go ahead and do context dot get placement direction, or I guess get player look direction. And then in here, we're going to go ahead and set, or I guess context.world dot get block state, and we're going to go ahead and do context dot get block pause dot, and then we're going to do with facing comma, and then we're going to get the player look direction. So this one line, it's a little bit long, but we're getting the world, we're getting the block state at the block position. All this is coming from the context. You can see context is used 3 times here. And then we're basically getting the player that placed it and the way that they're looking. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like in the game. Actually, yeah, so something important is that we're just getting it, we're actually setting it. So let's go ahead and actually return this so that that's the actual block state that is being set up. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like. It seems that I have an error somewhere. Ah, yes, an extra semicolon. So let's see what that looks like in game. And I suspect that it's not going to be exactly right, but we can see. All right, so let's go ahead and, oh my goodness. So let's see. It does not exist on air. Yeah, you know what? That's pretty expected. I think it's because I'm getting the block state of what was there before. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace this get block state, and instead we're going to go ahead and get default block state for the block. So let's do this, get default state, and we're going to do dot with. All right, and I'm also going to set the honey level to 0, just to cover my bases. Okay. All right, so we're back, and let's go ahead and try placing it again. And okay, well, it's just facing the same direction. When you change the block state, the previous blocks are going to disappear. So just make sure that you kind of solidify how you want the block states to be. But you see that when I now look at this, it's facing, well, I guess it's facing west or down. So this down one we probably don't want, but oh, I never changed energy level back to the proper name. So let's go ahead and fix these other things. So we're gonna change this back to honey level. We're gonna go down here, and instead of facing, we're gonna get horizontal player facing. And honestly, something probably pretty important is that instead of just facing, I'm gonna get horizontal facing here as well. And let's go ahead and rename it in here. I'm just going to press Shift F6 and paste. So horizontal facing, because there's no such thing as an up or down honey block. So okay, so this should be good now. But now you could see that the block itself was not actually changing. And the reason why it wasn't changing is because we actually need to go ahead and go back into our block model. Actually, we need to go into our block state, and we need to change based off of these variables that we just set up. All right, so what we're going to do is in here, we're going to check if facing is equal to east, then we are going to rotate the y by 90. Then we're going to keep doing this for all the different directions. So we have east, we have north, we have south, and we have west. So for north, I'm just going to set it up to be the default. Then for south, I'm going to set it up to be 180 degrees, and then finally 270. So this should yield us different directions in game. Because I kind of messed with the block state again, I'm pretty sure the blocks are going to disappear again, but that's okay, we'll just place new ones. Okay, so we can already see that there's some rotation going on, but if I place it here, you can see it's actually placing in this direction. So there's two things we could do here. We could go in and change the variance until we see the correct direction, or we can go and change the placement state. Now, I'm more inclined to actually go ahead and change what it is in this file here. So let's go ahead and do 0. Well, I guess no longer needed. And if it doesn't work this direction, then we're going to go the other direction. 270. Oh, I didn't put them in the correct order. So east. Okay, so never eat. If I put 90 there, yeah, this is kind of getting complicated. Okay, let me go ahead and change it so that they're in order, so that it's a lot easier for me to take a look at. Okay, north, east, south, west. Okay, great. So this will become 90. This is now 0. This is negative 90. And this right here is negative 180. We can go ahead and translate those over, but that should work just fine for us. Okay, yes. So now if I place this, you can see that it is working as expected at least some of the ways. So it looks like when it's east and west need to be flipped. So I guess actually let me quickly just make sure that the other direction is working as expected so that I can just flip it. Okay, great. So yeah, so east and west, they are backwards. And I'm realizing that 180 would technically be the same as negative 180, and this would be the same as 270. So let's go and do that. All right. All right, so now it is working as expected and facing us no matter what. So this is good, but now we can see that the honey level is always a 0. So we're going to go ahead and mess with this honey level variable, and what we're going to do for that is basically we're going to go back and we're going to accommodate for when the honey level is a certain amount. So how we're going to do that is we're going to go ahead and just do comma honey underscore level equals 0, and here we're just going to put it in each one of these. And all of these are going to pretty much stay the same no matter that honey level. I'm just going to put a comma in this last one so it's easier to copy. But basically, we can see that it repeats, and all we got to do is replace with ones here on the next set of copies. And you can see now, okay, well, I accidentally got that one mixed up. But you can see we have these 4 that are all 0s and these 4 that are all 1s. And this is ensuring that it stays the same in these special cases. In when it's 2 and so on. And we're just going to keep doing this until we get all the way up to 4, which is technically the 5th, because we started with 0. Okay. than 4. So with that, now what I'm going to do is that we're going to create a new model, and this one we're going to go ahead and call beehive_honey. And that means that we have to go into our block models and copy this and paste it, _honey again, because that's what we just did. And now we just need to make sure that front texture is now using honey. So we can do beehive front_honey. And then in the beehive block, we need some sort of way to go ahead and see that the honey is working properly. So in the use call, I'm going to go ahead and increase that honey level. And something important to do here is to go ahead and check if the world is remote. And if so, we're just going to go ahead and return. We'll go ahead and return true. So this will make your hand swing when you return true. And that'll make sure that, like, if you aren't the server, that you aren't messing with the block state in your local copy of the world, because that will all update by itself using the server. But basically, we're going to grab the current block state at the block position, and all we're going to do is we're going to get the honey level of current honey level, right? And we're going to increase it by 1. And something important is I want to check if honey is greater than, if it's greater than 4. I guess, let me think about this. Okay, so I just checked my notes, and turns out that how it works is that there's actually another state. So there's actually 6 states, because the minimum and maximum are inclusive. So we're going to go back to the block states, and in here, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this one again, and paste it here. And okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so yeah, so this one, we're going to set it to 4. And this one down here, where there's actually honey in it, we're going to set it to 5. All right, great. So this accommodates for that extra one. Let's go ahead and go back to our, yeah, okay, so it's on use when it's greater than 5. So this would be an impossible state. We're going to go ahead and set honey equals 0. And after we calculate what honey should be, we're just going to go ahead and world.setBlockState with notify to let the world know that it's changed in the position that the current block state is now going to have a new set of honey level, and that honey level is going to be set to honey. Okay, and just for fun, we're going to also explore a little bit of entity stuff, and what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to spawn in a singular diamond. So item stack is equal to new item stack, and all we're going to have is a singular diamond. And you can see that in this item stack that the count is automatically set to 1, so we can just leave it as that. I was going to set it to 1, but there's no need, as that's already the default. So we're also going to go ahead and make an item entity, and this item entity we'll just name item entity. Well, I guess we'll do the Java convention, and then new item entity. And in here, we need to go ahead and give it a world. We need to give it a position, and I'm just going to go ahead and put it in the middle of the block, above the block, and again in the middle in the Z direction as well. And the item stack that we're going to have in inside of this item entity is actually the stack we just created. And then we'll go ahead and spawn this entity in the world. Okay, and that should be good to go. So we set the block with the new honey level, and if the honey level is high enough, we go ahead and spawn a diamond, just for fun. And this honey increasing, it's kind of broken, but that's okay. We're just demonstrating. Okay, so let's go into our world, and let's go ahead and place down our honey thing, our beehive. And if we right click, you can see that honey level has increased by 1. And if I go up to 5, you can see now it has that honey texture on the front. And if I right click again, then a diamond comes out. Now, the thing that I noticed really quick is that my hand is not swinging when I use it. And that's something that I want to fix really quick. You can see that we're using the super on use, and in the super on use, we're using false. And I was just saying how if we use true, our hand swings, and that'll go and fix that issue. So let's go ahead and run it again. All right, and that will go into the world, and you can see our hand is swinging when we use it, and that honey level is updating properly, so we're good to go. All right, so the next thing that I want to do, okay, at this point, if you watch the basic set and the advanced set of the tutorial, you know how to make the block with a basic texture like we did with the hay bale, and now we can also do it with block state. So the block state is for like more advanced models where you want the textures to do all sorts of fancy things, but just know that if you really like the old method with a texture listener, you can go ahead and use the texture listener and do everything that you see right here with that texture listener based off of the meta. And you can set the meta encode. And I'll quickly show how to do that just because I can. But just remember that this is if you're using the old system, the beta 1.7.3 way, not the modern system. So if we get texture, we can also use meta, and we can basically set it so that on placed, we can get the direction. Here, let me just quickly on placed. You can see that the one of these has int direction, and just you can go ahead and do world.set meta, set block meta at the XYZ into the direction, and then in here, basically you can use the meta as a direction, do some messing around. But if meta is equal to 1, for example, you could do some fancy stuff here. But you could basically do also side is equal to 0, which would be I think the bottom or the top, and then 1 would be the yeah, again, like the same thing. And so basically if side is equal to 0 or side is equal to 1, you basically do the top or bottom texture, and you just go around for the other sides as well. But this is basically like let's just say this is hypothetically north, and this right here is the top and bottom. You can basically go through this entire branch of getting texture, and it will work perfectly fine for you. But it is cumbersome to do it this way, and that is why we have the beauty of the block state, which is what we're doing here with these JSON data driven. So that will work perfectly fine. So now that is just basically to wrap up on block states. I'm going to go ahead and close all my tabs. And what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and add items to the game. All right, so as a continuation, let's go ahead and create a new listener, and this is going to be an item listener. And we're still going to follow the same structure that we have here by using this namespace. I'm going to copy this top part. And we also want to go ahead and have a private static. I just want to make sure that I'm doing this right. Yeah, private static void register items. Okay, and something important is that we need to go ahead and pass that item registry event into this. All right, so let's go ahead and create our variables for these items. So we'll have public static item glass underscore bottle, and we're going to have a glass bottle, a honey bottle, and we're also going to have a honey comb. Okay, and these are a lot simpler to make than blocks. We can just go ahead and do glass bottle equals new template item. Okay, and then namespace.id glass bottle. But remember how we set that translation key? We're going to do the same exact thing, and I'm going to just put it in line so that you can see it nice. And you can see that's just the same thing. And we're just going to do that 2 more times, but instead of glass bottle, we're going to do honey bottle and honeycomb, and honey bottle, and also honeycomb. Okay, so these are 3 items that we're making at the same exact time, but it should work perfectly fine. And the next thing that we're going to want to do is that we're going to go into Station API and then lang, and in here, instead of tile, it's going to be item.at. And then we're just going to follow the same convention of what we just did here. And I'm going to copy these over for making it easier for me. Glassbottle.name equals, and I'm just going to duplicate this a couple times, honey bottle and honeycomb. Okay, so glass bottle, honey bottle. I'm going to do glass bottles because it's more, you usually will get a bunch of glass bottles at once. And we're also going to do honeycomb. Okay, so that will set up the lang file for us, and usually you want to have a new line on the end of any file that you create just for Git purposes. Okay. All right, so now that we have these lang files, let's go ahead and create a new directory in our textures, and we're going to call it item. And then just in here, we're going to right click, and open in terminal. And again, in the description, I'll have this this command that you can paste, which will go ahead and download 2 textures, or 3 textures, my bad. We have the glass bottle, we have the honey bottle, and we have the honeycomb. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and close these. And what we're going to want to go ahead and do is that we're going to go into our item models and create a new file. And this one's going to be glass bottle.json. And in here, we're going to do curly braces, parent, and the parent is going to be Minecraft item, item, and then forward slash generated. So this generated type basically makes it so that we can have multiple textures and they'll go ahead and layer on top of each other. So we're going to create the first layer, which is layer 0, and in here we're just going to do bees item. So again, since this is textures and bees, we know that we're in bees and then all the way down in textures, and station API because it actually implements these. But textures and then item, so that's that item part, and then forward slash glass underscore bottle, and we don't need to include that PNG part because that's already assumed. Okay, so now that we have glass bottle, we're going to go ahead and copy it, and we're going to do honey bottle as well. And we're going to copy honey bottle, we're going to do honeycomb. Okay, and what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to copy what I wrote, honeycomb, and in this one, Shift F6, copy and paste. All right, so now we have all the textures. We have all the textures, we have all the things referencing the textures, and we have our item listener. The only thing that we're forgetting now is, oh, this is still gray, and so is this. So we're going to go ahead and copy item listener. We're going to go to a fabric mod JSON, and items exist on both the server and the client. So we're going to go ahead and put it in the event bus for both, and with that, we should be able to run the game, and we should have both, or all 3 of those items added to the game. Okay, so let's go ahead and see. We are seeing that they are not added to the game, or are they? Here, let's go ahead and search it up. Honey? Yeah, no. Okay, let's see what's going on with that. Okay, so I realized that it's just because I didn't annotate this as an event listener. And now, if we go ahead and run it, this is a test line to see why that wasn't running, but let's go ahead and see. All right, and at the end, we can see, well, our glass bottle. Okay, I'm realizing the bottles with an S is not working, so we're going to remove that S. And then honey bottle, and then honeycomb. But honeycomb seems to be referring to an invalid texture. And that's because, oh, honeycomb does not have an underscore because it's one word. So we're going to go ahead and rename it just throughout our entire code base. Honeycomb, and go back into item listener. And instead of having underscore here, we're just going to remove that. All right. And in that lang file, I'm also going to change it to be one word and remove this S. Okay, and let's see it now. Okay, and now if we go back, we can see the honeycomb texture. And the only thing I forgot to rename is the lang file to also not have the underscore. So yes, as you can see, there's a lot of places where you can mess up, which is why you have to be able to identify the issue and go ahead and fix it. So there we go. We have honeycomb, honey bottle, and glass bottle. So that is working great, and you can see them in the game world, and beautiful. We have items now. Maybe we should make it so that this, instead of dispensing a diamond, will dispense our honeycomb, which I will do as the very last thing. All right, item. So we can reference it by just doing item listener dot honeycomb, which is why instead of item listener, we can go ahead and rename this to be instead of item listener, it could be basically bees items, or yeah, bee items. I think I like that. Refactor. I'm also going to do bee blocks, and this should be fine. But init listener, honestly, I think that should just stay as is. So that is good to go. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is, let's go ahead and see that in the beehive block, that actually is giving us a honeycomb. Okay, and honeycomb, wow, nice. Okay, I just remembered one last little touch that I wanted to do, which was in resources again. We're going to create a directory. This is for making it mineable with an axe, like quick with an axe. We're going to do data Minecraft station API, tags, blocks, mineable, all separated by like these slashes, right? Ax dot, or actually, wait. So that's not going to be a folder, but in the final one, we're going to create a new file, ax.json. Okay, and here I'm just going to do values, and I just want to add one value, and this is it, and it's going to be beehives. Sorry, bees beehive. Okay, and this will make it break with an ax. Okay, so the next thing we're also going to do is we're going to create some recipes. So how about we go ahead and show both ways of making recipes, one of which is to create a new Java class, and this is going to be a recipe listener. Okay, and this will go ahead and we'll grab this again and put this up top, and then add event listener, public static void, and then register recipes, and recipe registry or register event. Okay, and later on you're going to learn how to hook into this for like your own blocks, or your own like crafting types. But we're going to go ahead and just use a vanilla recipe register event dot vanilla type is equal to recipe register event vanilla dot, and then from type event dot recipe ID. Okay, and what we're going to do is if the type is equal to recipe register event dot vanilla dot crafting shaped, what we can then do in here is we can do crafting registry. Oh, crafting registry dot add, and then since we're in the shaped category right now, we're going to start out with the output, which we're going to do new item stack, and it's going to be of the glass bottle. So we're going to do b items dot glass bottle, and we'll do 3 of them. And the idea is, okay, the idea is that we're going to put the pattern in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to do glass, a blank space and a glass, and then it's going to be on the second layer, it's going to be a blank space, glass, and then a blank space again. And we're just going to leave it at that, and that way it can be put at the top or the bottom. In theory, we could add a third layer like this with 3 spaces, and this would make it so that it could only be put on top, or we could put it on the other side where it's basically like the spaces up here at the top. But I want it to be able to be on both, so I'm just going to leave it as that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say that glass is new item stack. So we're basically saying what this is, and we're saying that it is the glass. Okay, and with just this register recipe, we can now put recipe listener inside of Fabric Mod JSON, and recipes again exist on both the server and the client, so we can put recipe listener there. Go ahead and run it. And in here, we can just go into the world and grab some glass. All right, glass, crafting table. And now you can see that, we get 3 glass bottles. So this is one way of creating a crafting recipe. Now we're going to cover the second way of creating a crafting recipe, which should be through JSONs. But just really quick to touch up on this, you can also do if type is equal to recipe register event vanilla dot, and then we have smelting and we have crafting shapeless. Both of these have their own unique quirks, but basically just make sure that you're inside of the if statement, and you can do I think smelting registry dot add smelting recipe, and you can see, oh, input output makes sense. We can also do shapeless, and it would basically be crafting registry dot add shapeless recipe, and all that it would do is output and then just put as many items as you want afterwards. So new item stack, I don't know, glass, and we can make it so that let's make this block dot glass. In theory, we could just go ahead and put, well, let's try this one, dirt, and we could, let's make sure, I don't know, what else can we put in there? Let's just do dirt and glass, sure. And let's quickly just see that this works as well. And we'll make it so that 2 is the output. Okay. And I'm just going to grab piece of dirt, and you can see that if I throw these in here, oh, 2 glass. So there you go. There's the crafting recipe for shapeless. Doesn't matter where you put it in there. And smelting was pretty self-explanatory. It will also work just fine. So yeah, now let's go ahead and get into the data-based recipes. So we're going to go ahead and create a new folder in this data area, and it's going to go ahead and be our mod name. So in our case, it's bees. And then in bees, we're going to do station API, recipes, and this is basically what we need. So I'm going to create a new file in here, and we're going to go ahead and have the b1.7.3 recipe. Okay, so I'm going to make it so that the b1.7.3 recipe is going to, first of all, we have to describe what type it is, and this is just like earlier. There's like smelting, but we're not messing with smelting right now. We're doing crafting shaped. And in here, we want the pattern, which is specific to the crafting shaped. And the pattern is going to basically, we're going to go ahead and make it so that there's just a bunch of wood around it. Wood, and then in the middle, I'm going to do a honeycomb, and then wood on the bottom as well. And then after that, I'm going to create a set of keys. And in here, the key is going to be wood, is going to be Minecraft : oak plank. Pretty sure that's what it is. I'll go ahead and we'll just go ahead and see if it works or if it complains at us. And then we'll do H for bees, and then honeycomb, right? I just realized we do need to put this in. Yeah, so we need to go ahead and do it this way. So W : and then in here, item. So in modern, you don't have to do this item part. It just works. Okay, and then H, item. And let's go and copy this. Okay, great. So that's the key. Okay, and now the last thing we need to say is what's our result? So our result is going to be the item, bees, honey, what is it? No, sorry, beehive. And then we want the count of that to be 1. So this is our complete JSON. That was kind of a lot to go through, but all of them follow this kind of format. And you can go to the Nya wiki, which looks like this. Just Google it, and you can see in there for examples. There's also, the example for furnace and crafting shapeless. And I'll quickly just copy what that looks like. This one's for a furnace. So you can see Minecraft smelting, ingredient, and result, and the count and damage is meta basically. And then we can also take a look at what it looks like for crafting shapeless. I'll just cover it really quick. You can see crafting shapeless, just all the ingredients, the meta if required, and you can do tags as well, and you can have the result. So that is how you would do that. But for ours, this is all we need. So let's go ahead and run it, and this might be oak planks, but let's go ahead and see. Let's see, I just got an error. Exception happened. Let's try that again. Maybe it'll happen again. Yeah, so let's go ahead and see what's going on here. Null. Mixin. What it looks like is happening is that this is initialize crafting item stats. I can only presume that this is being caused by this. So what I'm going to do temporarily is move it out and see if it works. Yep, it does work. So this must be false in some way. And I think I know what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back in and put oak planks with an S. Okay, there we go. Yep. So just make sure that this ID is correct. You can Google the IDs and that'll work. Okay, so let's go and grab ourselves oak planks, and we already have a honeycomb, and let's just go ahead and put this on the outside and the honeycomb, and there's a beehive. Excellent. And you can see that all of our functionality is still working. So that is how you would do recipes. Okay, so now the next topics that we're going to cover is probably going to be entities. Hello, I'm back for the entity part of the tutorial, and I'm joined here by Telvarost.
Hello, I'm Telon Tara Telvarost, and I'm joining Slanelight. We are teaming up for the entity portion of the tutorial.
Awesome, awesome. So he's gonna basically be critiquing everything I've done up to this point, and it's gonna be great. And one that we talked about just before the video, let's go ahead and take a look at my events here. We go into init listener, and we go into recipe listener. You see how we have the repetition of namespace here. He says that's a bad idea, and he'll explain why.
Well, there's just a lot of code duplication. I was saying that you don't need to copy and paste that every single time. He can separate that out into a global class, which is more useful for just stuff that you need everywhere in the mod. And he was worried that he would have to attach it to an event listener and some sort of init listener. That was the case for old Station API Alpha 3, where we used null.get. But with Station API Alpha 4, the namespace.resolve no longer requires an event. It's just a function which will get the namespace for us.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. And so how I understood it is that this had to be everywhere, and it was specifically going to be called from in here to give the name. And I believe, yeah, so that's how that worked before. But now, thanks to this, I can just go ahead and go into my top level Bs and create a new Java class. And I'm just going to do bmod. And instead of having this in every single one of them, I'm just going to copy it and put it into here. And I'm not going to really put anything else in there. We'll just maintain this just because it did come with the base. But wait, let me go ahead and unadd all of them from here so that I don't accidentally cross import, which will leave us with a bunch of errors, which is fine because we're about to fix them. And if I go back and import, it's going to import from the base that we have here. And I just need to do that with all of them. Okay, and let me just make sure there's no other errors. And that should be good. Okay, so now that we have that all resolved, I'm going to go ahead and close all of my tabs here. And we're going to go ahead and start off with creating the necessary files to begin on the entity. And hopefully I don't mess up on anything else, and Telverost will go ahead and tell me if I do, and that should work out for us. So we need to go ahead and add a new initialization event, and this is going to be to add the individual B mobs. Yeah, so there could be multiple mobs, which is why I just always ended in an S. And I am going to set it up similarly to how we have these other ones, where we have the entry manager lookup for our private methods. So I'm going to put this here at the top, and I'm also going to grab this event listener format with the private static void. And instead of using register blocks, it's going to be register mobs. And then also for this, it's going to be mob handler registry events. So this is actually, yeah, so register mob handlers. On top of registering the mob handlers, we also have an event listener for the entity registry. So actually, I'm going to rename this to B entities, and in here, we're going to have entity register event. Okay, and rename the method to register entities. Okay. So now in each one of these, we're going to register something, but we don't actually have the class yet. So what we're also going to do is in this top level Bs, we're going to create a new package, and it's going to be called entities. And in here, we're going to go ahead and have the B entity. And for an entity, we know this is going to be an animal, so we can do animal entity and just go ahead and set up the constructor as the same. And we're going to come back to add a bunch of features to this. We're also going to implement a mob spawn data provider. And this is just so that we have the Station API multiplayer compatibility. So this is pretty important. And we're just going to do return namespace dot ID and then B. And we're going to import namespace from this bmod class that we made earlier. And this should be the bare bones basics of what we need for the entity to exist in the world and work on multiplayer. So
It will actually need one thing more. It will need the tracking parameters at the top. Otherwise, you won't get syncing.
we'll put it there just in case, because I don't think it's going to hurt anything. So it turns out I looked back at this code later, and it turns out we don't need hash tracking parameters, so you can just leave that out. If you're extending an animal or a living, you don't need it. But if you're extending something like an entity, like an arrow, then you definitely need it. But you don't need it here. So we'll just set that just in case, and I think that's good to go. Okay, so back to here, inside of b entity, we are going to go ahead and set event.register b entity.class, and then the entity identifier, I'm just going to do b, because all of the vanilla ones are like this. We could hypothetically do our namespace, but most mods just go ahead and do it this way. Okay, and then we also need to register the mob handler. So it's going to be registry.register event.registry. So this is calling onto this specific registry. And I do need to import this as well. And then this one, we're going to go ahead and do namespace.id b. Because this, so basically, this one in particular is very vanilla-esque. This doesn't actually take in, last time I checked, this doesn't take in an identifier. Yeah, so this is very close to vanilla, so that's why we're just going to do a basic string there. But this one is properly flattened for the mob handlers, so we'll go ahead and do it properly as well. And that's all we should need for that. It should be able to spawn in the world now, but we won't really know what we're looking at until we go ahead and give it a shape. So if we go back to the B entity, we need to go ahead and set its bounding shape. So in here, we're going to do set bounding block spacing, and the B is roughly 8/10 of a block. And we're also we're going to set the texture here, but we don't have it downloaded just yet. So let's go ahead and set that up next. If we go into assets, B's, station API, and technically this one doesn't have to be in station API because we're referencing it directly, but I just like them all being here. So in theory, you could make a new textures folder in B's or just put it really anywhere since you're writing the whole path. But for me, I like to keep it all together. So I'm going to do textures, and in textures, I'm going to create a new class or a new directory entity. And in here, I'm just going to go ahead and right click and press open in terminal. And I have a curl command for the B texture, which is going to be in the description of this video. And if we just make sure that it worked, we have our B texture. Now, something important to note with this is, let me go ahead and show this inside of the directory. You can see that if I right click and press properties, that this image is exactly 64 width and 32 pixels high. And this is a hard limit in beta 1.7.3. In modern versions, you can do 64 by 64, and that's the that's pretty much the standard. And I believe you can do outside of those bounds as well. And I think that there's a way to do it in beta 1.7.3 as well, but you probably have to mix in that property. But if I right click and open with GIMP, I just want to show how this works really quick. So let's go ahead and zoom in on this. So you can use any image editor, but if you can see right here in this bottom area, although very hard to see, but right here is about position 1010, or we might end up doing 1111. But based off of this rectangular position, it'll assume this is one face. Like it'll just go ahead and make the cube manifold. And another thing to note is that the bottom side texture is flipped in beta 1.7.3. So in this case, this bottom was actually originally flipped around. So if I let me quickly create a new from clipboard. So this was originally upside down. So let's see if I can rotate it, transform, and rotate 180. So in the original, it actually was like this, but in this version, for some reason, the bottom side is flipped. The other sides, I believe, are perfectly fine and don't need any flipping, but that's just one modification I made inside of this B texture that you got from the original. The other was that this was originally 64 by 64, but there was nothing in the bottom of it, and I just went ahead and cut it in half. So this will work for our purposes and is perfectly fine, but basically we're going to go ahead and start with this basic block shape for the body, and then from there, like this is the side and then this is the back, and you just got to make sure that all the sides are even. This is definitely something that I would mess with in terms of when you're setting up the model. You can set up the cubes and where they are, and it's just something you have to kind of like play around with when you're making it. So that is a lot to say that this work was already done for you basically, because this is already in the perfect format. And there's a lot of information on that on the internet. And also, you can look up a modern tutorial for for entities and how to make Java entities in Blockbench, and it'll be pretty one-to-one. You'll just go ahead and have to copy some of the differences into into the same kind of lingo that's being used inside of this version with our current mappings. So all that to say that this can be complicated, but it doesn't have to be. It's just a bunch of trial and error. Okay, so on that note, we have our B texture and we can reference it. So we're going to go back into our B entity, and in here, we're going to go ahead and set that texture. So the texture is equal to, and you just go ahead and do a string location, and it's going to be assets / your mod ID, station API, because we put in that folder, textures, and entity, and then b.png. So in this case, we do include the PNG, unlike those JSON files, because we are directly referencing this from code. Okay, all right, so now we're going to also go ahead and set up our B renderers, and that's going to be a new event listener because if we go into our fabric mod JSON, which we haven't done it yet, but we're going to have another in it for the B entities, and there's also going to be one for the B entity renders because the entities will exist both on the server and on the client. So, am I saying anything wrong, Telveros, by the way?
Just that the renderer only exists on the client, which is exactly why you're putting it here.
Yep.
And do keep in mind that limit for the texture size. The texture must be 32 pixels tall by 64 pixels wide. It's easy to mess that up and then to wonder why things are looking weird. And then yeah, the cube unfolds like a net. It always unfolds in that sort of way where it's a side on the left, a side on the right, a side up, then the center face of the cube. In keeping that in mind, we're going to be referencing the exact position of those cubes that we want to draw in our texture.
Exactly. So yeah, it can get pretty tricky when it gets to those nuances. And so yeah, you definitely it is something that you got to play around with. How was your experience with playing around with that for the first time, Telveros, on the gnomes, I
Oh, it was
believe?
terrible. I didn't know that the texture had to be that size, and even when you do get it that size, positioning the cubes is a little tough. I did create an entity in Blockbench, but it doesn't translate very well. Hopefully in the future there's more of an API to do it, but there's no sign of an API being made right now. So
Yeah, it does get pretty complicated, but if you trudge along, you'll be able to do it as well. And it is, I mean, you could do it from code just like Notch originally intended. But yeah, so
or
we
just
don't.
make an entity that's all one color. Then you don't have a problem.
Oh yeah, true that, true that, true that. So yeah, okay. The only thing here that we don't have yet is actually the B entity renderer. So we're gonna make another base package in B's, and I'm just gonna name it client because both the model and the renderer are both on the client and never really on the server. So we're also going to make a model package and also another folder for renderer. Okay, so in each one of these, we're going to create a B entity model and then a B entity renderer. So 1000% the renderer is a lot easier to set up. So we're going to go ahead and do this one first. Extends living entity renderer. Okay, and this could technically, I don't know if there's a animal entity renderer. Yeah, no, I think living entity renderer is what we
There's
gotta
a
use.
quadruped and entity renderer, but since we don't have legs on our entity, we won't use it.
Makes perfect sense to me. And we're just gonna override render. And I don't even think we need to override this, but uh, I am just going to do so. Okay, great. So now I'm going to go back to the. Let's go back into B-entity renderers and pass a new B-entity renderer, and all we need is. Oh man, this is actually something that we need from here. We need a new B-entity model, and the shadow radius we'll just set that to 0.4f, and that way we don't have to pass anything into here, and that would resolve this part. So this will work perfectly fine. Now back at the p-entity renderers, this now has issues because it basically wants it to be a certain way, and we're going to click on this, and it extends an entity model now. So that's pretty much all we need from there. and this should resolve. Okay, great. So now we're all the way down to the B entity model, which is going to be definitely this is the part where we're going to do a lot of code. Okay. Hello, this is future me. I realized that this is a lot of code to write for your first experience with the entity. So I have the entire paste bin of the code that you can just copy into your code base. You can still watch through, but on the screen is a timestamp of where to skip to um, for the next kind of interesting segment where we test it, and then past that another timestamp of like when the model is done and we're working on instead the entity code. So how I like to structure it and how modern Minecraft modders anyways like to structure it is we have a initial model part, which is the bone. And anything that happens to the bone happens to all the other parts below it. Although it's not really structured that way in this version, it's useful for me to do it that way. You'd have to manually update all the children of the bone if you wanted it to work like that. And that's fine, but I basically just set it up that way. So I am going to actually set up. So this right here is something that I found important when kind of transferring from Blockbench. Um, you have to have a Y pivot difference because the Y pivot, for some reason, it got flipped. So like it was like the Minecraft world, a higher Y is up, but in beta Minecraft, but not in modern Minecraft, it's kind of reversed how the Y works inside of the pivot. So it is very, very strange. For me, I found 16 worked on this model. I don't know if that's going to work on all models, but that should work for us. And I'm going to do a new model part. And the only reason that I keep this around is because it helps with all sorts of models that I bring from Blockbench. You can go ahead and just incorporate it inside of there, but we're going to use it in the tutorial just because it's going to probably come useful to you if you're going to use Blockbench. Okay, and we're going to start off with our bone being at UV00. It doesn't really matter because our bone has no size to it, so we're not going to worry about it too much. But what does matter is the pivot zone. And like I was saying, usually you would start the pivot at 0, 0, 0, but I'm going to go ahead and remove out the Y pivot diff. And that's going to be useful later again. And we're just going to, just to begin with, it's going to get really complicated, but just to begin with, we're going to give it a body. And so the model part is 0, 0. I do need to define the body as well. Okay, so this one we're actually going to add a real cube to. So we have a method add cuboid. And so the important thing to know about this one is that the parameters on adding a cuboid is the XYZ start position and the size of those in each dimension of those. Okay, so in here, we're going to go ahead and do negative 3.5f, negative 4.0f, and negative 5.0f. And size 7, 7, and 10. So these are just the sizes based off of that texture that we have and also based off modern Minecraft. So that should work perfectly fine for us. And like I was saying before, I do like to base the pivot off of the initial bone. So you could just recall this code and it would work perfectly fine. And again, this is how modern Minecraft is structured. And I really do try to stay very close to modern Minecraft because of how much tooling there is to it. And that's why I kind of have these workarounds around it. And same with, I mean, this is a backport of a modern mob, right? So this should work perfectly fine for us. All right, so with just this change, we should be pretty much good to go. Let me just review. Yeah, so we actually are going to go ahead and create a render call inside of the B model so that we can call it from, yeah, so this is going to be called from the game. And something else that's always called from this is to set angles. Let me make sure that it's not, yeah, so set angles. We're going to come back to setting the angles, but all we have to do for now is we're going to go ahead and pass everything through to it. And this is going to be useful for when we're animating the wings. And we're going to go ahead and render the body at the scale given to us. So yeah, scale, I don't think that scale really matters for much entity stuff in this version of Minecraft, but later versions of Minecraft, this variable is very important because there's a scale command specifically in modern Minecraft. But I'm trying to think, and I don't think that anything is really all that important in that. Okay, so the other thing, we're going to come back to animating the model when it comes to making those wings move. And we'll also do the same with set angles. But for now, this should be all that we need inside of our entity model. Our entity renderer is just basically doing the super, which is probably fine for us. You can get into more of the description of changing the GL calls. But for us, this should be all we need, okay? So let's go ahead and also make sure that our fabric mod JSON is all synced up. Yeah, we have our client and we have our B entities. I think that this should be just enough for us to be able to get into it. Anything wrong that you're seeing, Teleros? Any horrific thing we're about to see in the game?
I just want to say that if you're struggling at all to make your texture, make your model, something that could be good is just basing off a vanilla model. Just go into the Minecraft source code, pull a generic entity there and a generic entity texture from vanilla, and just copy it. And then you can modify from there if you're struggling to make your own new thing. If you're comfortable with, having something that's a little bit close to a vanilla style mob.
Right. So that is true. You should take a look at how the vanilla entities look, and how you can do that is if you just look up like cow entity model. You just import that and control click, and you can see, oh, there's the udder and the horns, and this one in particular is importing from a quadruped. So all of these other variables are already here, and they just set the cuboid and stuff. And you can also go all the way down into external libraries and just look up Minecraft, Control F Minecraft, and if you go into here, you can go and find, and again, these are all linked up. You can look up cow entity renderer, which I think is probably where it is, or just in the cow entity, it's going to set the texture. But I believe mob, yeah, it's right here. So in mob, you can see for the cow, you can kind of see how where like the head is and things like that, and then you can compare it to what it's saying in here. So you can see UV00 size 886, and you can go back to this and kind of see, okay, 8, and then there's 6 and 6, right? So you can kind of see how it unfolds. Very useful to look at how it does it in vanilla Minecraft.
Yeah,
So
we actually haven't covered that part yet, but the UV is the location where the cube is in the texture. So that's what he's referencing there. He was showing that it was 8 pixels away from the left side of the texture, and 8 pixels from the top is the face of the cube.
right. Yes. I mean, actually, I think it was 6 6. Because it was here. Let's quickly go back and take a look at that. Minecraft. Again, I'm cutting this part out.
Well, actually, the UV is 00 for the head.
Right. So 00 would be referring to the top left of this texture, and because of the Z being 6, you can see in the cow model the Z is 6, and then it'd be 6 away in each direction, because the front of the face is that X Y kind of thing. So you're 6 away in each direction because of that Z, and then the front of the face is 8 by 8 because the X by Y is 8 by 8. And then Y is obviously vertical. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. And then you can see how like the rest of it wraps around. So it goes 6 more again, and then I believe that this is the back of the head here. Yeah, so 6, the back of the head, and this is the bottom of the head. This is the top of the head. So you can see that they kind of unnets in that kind of shape. So it does get kind of complicated. I would say just like kind of like put in blocks of color when you're initially making one, and then you can kind of see where the colors like kind of like not lining up. So that's probably a good method about going about it. But anyways, so coming back to this, I'm realizing that we can't actually summon our mob. I mean, I had a test world earlier, which is why it popped up. But what we need to actually do is go ahead and go into our build Gradle KTS, and in here, we're going to do mod implementation. And I'm actually going to put this in the description because it is a little bit complicated. But I'm going to actually copy it into here. And you can also type it as well if you wanted to, but I'm going to put this in the description. And this retro commands version. So retro commands is a mod that will give you commands in the game, and including the summon command. So I will go ahead and put in the version here, 0.5.7. And we press on this reload elephant in the top right to reload Gradle. Do you know why this is happening? It says that I'm unable to download a merged Binny. Tell Ross. Here, I'm going to close the project and reopen it and see if that
I
works.
would have Sorry. I was going to tell you hit the elephant. I don't
Okay.
know if you want to do this because you're then hit that. Yeah, hit that refresh.
All right, great, great, great. Yeah. So this time
Yeah,
it
I
worked.
was going to tell you to hit that instead of the elephant, but I should have
Oh,
just
okay.
done it.
Okay, that's totally fine. But yeah, in Gradle, and then you can press on this sync all Gradle projects. So there we go. So now we should have commands in the game. So I'm going to rerun the game, and I need to remove this count entity model that I was using to demonstrate really quick. Okay, and into the world. So on your end, you're just going to go ahead and do summon space and then B, and 3 tildes for the position to be local. And you can see, wow, we have a beautiful bee that is walking like an animal. But we're going to change it to have kind of more expected behavior. But if I hit it, you can hear it has a Steve Hurt sound. So we're also going to change the noise that it makes when you attack it, and also its death sound. I don't think I'm going to give it an ambient sound, but yeah, there you go. Okay, so let's go ahead and change some of these things. So let's go back into B entity, and in here, we're actually going to go ahead and take a look at how to add sounds. So we have the get hurt sound call, and we also have the get death sound call. And you can see if we hold control and click on this, that there's actually already a string in here for random.hurt. And yeah, also the death sound's also random.hurt. And we're actually going to change this so that it uses the station API. So we're going to put in a direct um, we're going to put a direct sound call into our mods resources, and this is something that Station API implements for us. So ideally, we're going to go ahead and create a position for the sounds to be, and Station API will automatically look in your sounds folder. So this is why it has to be in your mod ID, and then Station API, it has to be inside of the directory, and it's going to be called sound. Let me double check on that one.
Sounds S plural. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds with the S on the end. So sounds. And then inside of sounds, it will automatically query for sound, music, and I think there's one more. Do you know?
Streaming. So streaming
Streaming.
is for songs that the jukebox plays, for example.
Mhm.
Music is for background music in the game, and then sound is for pretty much anything else. Mob sounds, hurt sounds, lava sounds.
Exactly. Yeah. So once you're in the sound folder, you can pretty much put anything. I'm gonna do mobs and then another one for B, and we're gonna have both B death and B hurt, which we're gonna put in the death sound and the hurt sound. But to do that, we're gonna right click on B, and then we're gonna open in terminal, and we have yet another curl command. Ah, yes. And this is going to download the B sounds for you. So this is also going to be in the description, labeled B sounds. And now inside of here, you can see we have B death and B hurt. And it would play if I had something to open it with, but we'll just go ahead and hear it in the game. So now to reference this from code, we have to follow a very specific kind of set of things. So we first have to identify that we're actually looking inside of the bees mod. And then, and you can see here in the bees mod, we skip station API because this is already being imported by station API, and we just go all the way down into sounds and then sound. And this is actually automatically being used because you're doing a get hurt sound, right? So if you were using streaming, it would pretty much automatically go into the streaming folder, and if you were doing music, it'd go into the music folder. And sometimes you'd have to reference that, but most of the time, Station API will handle that for you. So because we know that it's a sound, we can actually go straight into saying mobs, and then inside of mobs, it's separated by dots, and we're going to do B dot and then B hurt. And we don't have to end it in OGG because it's not necessary. And we're going to
You
do the
know
same.
the sound file will need to be in .ogg, .mus, muse, or .wav, WAV format for the sound to work. No other sound file types are supported by this old version of Minecraft. You can't use MP3s, for instance.
I didn't know that you could even use a .wav, but yeah, I just always use .ogg because that's pretty much what all the old mods use, and that's what I use all the time. And you
Minecraft
can
mostly uses that. Yeah.
exactly, and you can use Audacity to convert any MP3 or .wav into .ogg. So that's what I recommend. but these ones have already been made for you, so we're just going to go and use that. But you can go onto that treacherous journey of using .ogg at some point. Okay, so now that we have a hurt sound and a death sound, let's go ahead and test that that works as well. Okay, and let's go into our world, and you can hear when I hit the beat, it has a sound, and when it dies, it also has the death sound that happens. So that's one step. So let's go ahead and finish up its model and make it so that it doesn't walk around like a pig or a cow. No difference here. Okay. So let's go ahead and also I just wanted to cover this really quick, but we're not going to keep it in. I'm pretty sure there's like get dropped item ID. So yeah, so you can basically modify what items it drops. And I think there's also another drop items. So when it dies, it calls this. So you can see that you can override the original code and just change it so that if you wanted multiple items to drop, you could change it so that this has multiple things that could be used on this drop item. And drop item actually just spawns the item into the world. So if I go down all the way, you can see item entity and then world spawn entity. But we're not going to do that because it's a nice abstraction. So and also bees don't drop anything in modern, so I'm not going to make my bees drop anything. But if you wanted to make your mob drop stuff, you would use drop items. And if you just wanted to use the default behavior, you can use get dropped item ID and it'll drop 1 to 3 or no 0 to 3. So sometimes it could drop nothing and it can drop up to 3. So that's how you would do that. But we are not going to do that because we don't need to do that. So that's perfectly fine as is. Okay, so now we're going to go back into B entity model and we're going to go ahead and set up the rest of the model. And this is going to be a kind of long process, so buckle in and get ready. But basically, because we're using entity model, there's just these two variables to begin with. There's no superclass, so we have to go ahead and set up every single model part. It's not like we're starting with a biped or anything like that. So we have the body, and I'm going to go ahead and set up just kind of an abstract kind of setup here and press Control D to duplicate it a bunch of times. And we're going to have the right wing, we're going to have the left wing, and we're going to have the front legs, we're going to have the middle legs. You wouldn't think that there's so much on the model, but there really is. But most of these are like 0 width items. We have the stinger, which in modern Minecraft, how it works is when they attack you, the stinger goes away. And then the left antenna, the right antenna.
Part of the reason why there are so many model parts is because he's doing 2D images here that he's going to be rendering onto the model. If he was just doing cubes, like if you just had 5 cubes, you'd only have 5 model parts probably.
That is exactly right. So I'm like I could definitely go through all of these, and I think I'm just gonna leave this in the description, this code, for each one of these. But basically, we're just setting the UV location, the cuboid, and the pivot location. So I'm gonna leave these in the description.
Once again, the UV is the location in the texture.
That's right. And the only thing that is really so these are like the main things to put onto the body. We also have a couple other ones which are kind of more complicated. So we're going to talk about pitch, yaw, and roll. So these are variables you can set. And do you know what the dilation variable is used for, by the way? This one. It turns out that's sorry.
Isn't that scale?
No, no, no. I think it's something else. I think it's like tolerances or something to do with that. But turns out that the default dilation, if we go into add cuboid, it looks to be already set to 0. Okay, well, you can see that. Yeah, this definitely has something to do with other things. But let me quickly see if I can find it. Yeah, 0.0. Interesting, but I'm just copying how it works in vanilla Minecraft, so we're going to go ahead and use 0.001. This is a great thing to Google. I would also ask ChatGPT, perhaps. We also have, so the wings are one in which we're going to be rotating it, and it starts off with a default rotation. You can look into pitch, yaw, and roll and how they work, but basically we're just rotating it in, what plane is this? Do you know? Telverost?
I do not.
Well, that's okay.
X, Y, and
Again,
Z is probably.
I think it is X, Y, and I think yaw is for the Y. Yeah. So in the axis it's rotating. I would look at Blender and that sort of thing if you want to look into how they work exactly. And then we're basically just doing the same exact thing. This mirror variable mirrors in the UV. So what happens is that it's basically doing the same. It's like reversing it inside of the texture where it sees the image. And then we're gonna go from there. We have the front legs, middle legs, and back legs. So all of this is in the description. I'll go ahead and have like a link to it so that it's instead of like some sort of GitHub gist. Okay, so the only other thing we have to do is for each one of these, we're going to go ahead and render it at the scale. And I'm going to do left wing, front legs, middle legs, and back legs, and also the stinger, left antenna, and right antenna. So yeah, if you forget to call any of these, which I've done before, it looks like the entity's not even there. The other thing to call on is that animate model is an override that we can use. And for this, I just basically, I'm going to set up a private float time variable, and this is going to help keep track of the amount that the wing should be flapping basically. And I'm going to use tick delta here. Actually, I'm going to get rid of super, and because I don't think that there's anything in the super. Yep. So I'm going to go ahead and do time plus equals tick delta, and this will make it so that it has a consistent amount of time between the last time that this was called. And we're just going to grab the body pitch, and we're going to set it to float math dot sine, and then time over 10. I'm pretty sure that this is something that may not be supported in this version of Minecraft, but it basically would tilt it up and down. We will see. And the other thing to do is we're going to set angles, and this is more so for those wings. And again, the super doesn't have anything, so we're going to do right wing dot pitch. We're going to set it to 0 to begin with. The left antenna, the right antenna.
You
And
actually technically don't have to create a time variable if you want to use the entity's age property.
right, I mean, you could do that, but I think age is counted in ticks, is it not?
It is, but you are incrementing your time also in ticks because it's the tick delta, and the tick delta itself actually pulls from the entity age.
I thought that, okay, well, for me, I thought it was the amount of time between ticks.
It is, but it's, I think, at the end of the day, pulling from the entity age. I forget exactly how the calculation works, but
I'm pretty sure that this, okay, but how would that even be possible? Okay, let's think about this for a second. The tick delta is a float that's passed, and it's like never like a whole number, and it has like variable amounts. How would that be derived from age somehow?
this was something I recently discovered when I was making the mod Old and Ornate based off your Midas Touch mod to stop the limbs from uh, wildly animating.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna print out tick delta to see what you mean, and we'll come back to this one.
I don't know if that'll help you. Let
W-
me see if I can dig it up.
Okay.
Also, do you want to do gen sources? That way you can control shift F and search the Minecraft source code.
Yes. Is it under? It's under. Which one of these is it under?
Fabric. And then you have to do choose sources. You have to go into a Minecraft class and click choose sources after you generate, and then select the sources.jar. And then
Okay.
that would
Choose
let you,
sources, and it's this one. Or
yes, no,
it's still
no,
generated. It
oh,
says unexpected.
no, no. Now you have to delete your Gradle
Uh, what?
because it won't, or hit choose sources again. It's not gone. The banner's not gone.
Okay.
It should have appeared right there.
Is it one of these?
No. Hit the drop down. You have to wait. Hit gen sources again. Did gen sources fail? Should be there.
Gen sources did fail.
Do it again.
Ah, build successful. Incredible. Okay,
Okay, and then
so
click the sources.
sources. Nice.
Yes.
Okay. All right, awesome. And then I can do Control Shift F.
Yes,
Scope.
but it's gonna search everything and not just Minecraft. So you're gonna want to uh click scope and then change the
I'm just gonna do it from this
create a
directory,
new
and
scope.
oh, look at that. New scope, all places.
I name it Minecraft, and then I scroll down and I search for net.minecraft, and then I click include recursively, apply.
Man, this is complicated. Um, man.
And then, oh, this is for the head bob. That's what I was thinking of. Uh, the head bob uses the entity age plus the tick delta.
Oh, okay. So I think that. So okay, so it's age plus tick delta basically.
Yes, which
Okay,
is
so
very similar to what you're doing.
I won't store this then, and I will
That's for the
instead
head
do
bob.
entity.age plus tick delta. Put that in parentheses. Okay, so basically that does achieve the same exact thing. The only other thing is that I think that I'm using it in set angles, and I don't see in set angles. Am I using it in set angles? No, but there is a lot of things going on in set angles, and I think I'm basing it off of the modern code. So what I'm going to do,
Also, oh, you're using a sign. Okay.
is, yeah. So this entire file will be in the description. There's a lot of things going on with the set angle, but basically you can use these various variables to set up the various rotations. I would definitely take a look at like how other entities do it. Like we can take a look at like cow entity model again, and we can go into set angles, and you can see. Oh, from here it's just copying it into from the original. When it comes to swinging hands, all of that is usually handled by the quadruped, and you can go and take a look at how that's done as well. So this is a lot of like swinging around numbers and stuff like that. But we can go ahead and use this and continue from there. Not extremely important because every single one of your entities are going to be different. The only other thing is that there's I have this method to help me out with interpolating angles, and that should be all we need for the model. And now it's time to get into the really fun stuff, which is not to just eye candy, but also the functionality of the bee, which is to actually see it walk around correctly. But I guess we can go ahead and run the game really quick and see what that looks like in the game. And you can see over here we have a working bee that's walking like a normal entity. But the wings are properly flapping, which is what matters, and it has all of its legs and antenna. So, mission accomplished. But it is kind of cursed because there are so many model parts, and usually there actually aren't as many model parts as there are here. I mean, I guess cows is not a really good example, but you can see even for the cow, we have, let's see, 6 here, and we have 3 here, so we have 9 total parts. But in this B entity, we have like 11 parts. What did I count that right? 19 plus 10 parts. Yeah, so, or 9 parts, right? I guess it's not that many, but it is a lot, okay? It is a lot for your first entity. So I would recommend, yeah, just go ahead and go into the description, copy this to make sure that it's exactly as you have it. Make sure your package is the same as what you have set up for yourself. I mean, do you recommend otherwise, Telverost?
No, sounds good.
Yeah, it's extremely time consuming, right? So when you're creating your own entity, it'll be worth it going through the model stuff. But yeah, this is definitely just, there's a lot of stuff going on. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into B entity, and we can get into the logic of the B entity. And basically the logic that I want for the B entity is I want it to be able to go to the beehive and then to a flower. Okay, so I want it to go back and forth. This also ended up being an extremely long segment, so I have the entity final code as well in the description, and you can just go and read through it and follow along in the video. But yeah, just copy in the entity code. You can skip to this timestamp to see it working and mess around with it on your own end. But yeah, it was a very long setup process. You can read the code and figure it out. You can watch the video. Either is fine. The timestamp is on the screen for just the very end of the video where we're testing. So the first thing that I actually want to get done though, before anything else, is I want to be able to create the functionality of hovering, because I don't want the bee to constantly be on the ground. So I'm going to create a method called hover, and it's going to have a float for distance off the ground. These are just these are variables that I found work really well for this exact use case. So these are really, I want like a kind of like upwards and downwards motion. So I'm going to set the basically the parameters for my like sine wave, and use a gravity offset. So this is basically based off of the Minecraft variable for gravity, and I'm going to use this to basically do the opposite effect. And I'm also going to have these three right here, which I'm going to copy over my constants actually, like this. So these are the constants that I'm going to be using. And a bunch of the stuff is really, we're fighting Minecraft here, but it should be perfectly fine. And the only reason that I do all of this is just because I am trying to avoid getting rid of the natural Minecraft velocities, because I could 100% do, okay, velocity y is equal to 0 and just like move up and down from there. But I am really trying to avoid doing that. So we're going to use that initial gravity variable to get rid of gravity. This is again based off of the basic gravity. And then we're also going to apply the hover behavior by basically, we're going to be recreating that that upwards and downwards motion by using sine and all of these other things that I have kind of dialed in. So we have the amplitude times sine, and then frequency times the age of the mob. Okay. Okay, so the other thing that we want to do is we want to set up a target y position that we want to get to based off of how far off the ground we want to be. So I'm going to use the block below the mob to begin with. So if the bee was in y position 10, I'm looking at y position 9 here. And I'm basically going to go ahead and go down, and I'm going to go down three blocks. And I'm going to get the block for that location. So block ID and get block ID. And I'm going to make the position of the bee is actually a float or a double, and we're going to go ahead and round that down to be a integer. And the only thing here that I want to do is that the loop needs to go ahead and change how far we're going. So we're going to do -I, and then I just want to make sure that the block ID is not air, so it's not equal to 0. And something interesting that I did notice when I was testing was that it is very strange when the block ID is also snow. So we're going to make sure that it's not snow either. And I'm going to just import block. Okay. And in this case, we're going to change our target y. And so the distance off the ground that we want to be is a variable that we go ahead and pass. And once we find it, let's go ahead and break out of our loop. And then we want attraction towards target y only if the entity is far enough from the target. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do double distance to target y. Target y minus y. So this is basically, we're taking a look at the absolute value of how far we are from target y. And if the distance to target Y is greater than attraction distance threshold, which again is one of our constants that we made earlier, we will go ahead and do a greater attraction. So all of this is just to kind of push around that mob to where we want it to be. So this is a lot of math heavy stuff just to basically be like, hey, the mob is not at the Y level we want. We're going to go ahead and change its hover factor. And we're going to dampen just based, just to basically make it so that if the gravity doesn't overtake it or anything, and also so it doesn't go up and down like an insane amount. So basically we're going to smooth out and prevent overshooting, right? So just like the comment says. So the only other thing that we got to do is set fall distance to 0, and that way when he touches the ground finally, like in theory, you're keeping the entity in the sky forever. And once it actually finally touches the ground, it will just fall to its death. So we want to make sure that it does not fall to its death. Okay, so the other things that we want to do is we're going to create some other utilities. And one of these utilities is we're going to have a constant target, and I'm going to use this as a variable. And something important when you're importing this is that you want to import the modification station vec3d, or else this Minecraft one is not very useful for our use case. So just make sure that you're using the modification station one here. And then inside of target, so inside of, we want to mess with the target. So we're going to go public void go to block. This is probably going to be a very useful utility function that you're going to be using. And we're going to go vec3d pause, and we're going to set our target to the position that's given through this method. And we're also going to set our path to, basically we're going to grab the world variable, and we're going to find the path through there. In this beta version of Minecraft, in later versions, you're finding path using the entity, but in this version, we're using the world variable to basically interact with the blocks of the world so that we can find the optimal path using a path finding algorithm. So all that to say that this set path is taking in a path variable, and we can create a path variable by using the world. So we want the entity that we're using, which is this entity that we have right now, and we can go and have a target entity. This is useful for like zombies and stuff like that. But in our case, we are not using a target entity. We're rather using a target position. And so we're going to go ahead and cast our position to integers, because this is expecting integers, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, integers. And also the range. So I'm pretty sure that the range is, so how far away that it's willing to look through the pathfinding algorithm. So we're going to just keep that in mind. And for all of our algorithm uses, we're just going to keep it to 16 because really there should be no case in which we're trying to target to a block that's further than 16 blocks away. Okay, and the only other thing that I would say is a very useful function is public void stop moving. And that would go ahead and be target is equal to null. And targets are variable, so it doesn't really matter what it's set to, but it's just useful for checking. And we're also going to set the path to null. And I mean, technically, we don't really need the target as it's being used to just make sure that we don't have a path at that time. And in theory, you could just do has path, and this would check if path is null. So really, this may not be necessary. I don't really. We'll come back to that. Okay, so the other things that we want to do is we're going to set it up so that it's going to find a beehive to be its home block, and it's going to try to go to that home block specifically for just like depositing pollen to, or honey, or doing its thing, whatever bees do. So I'm going to go ahead and have another variable for the home block and import block position. And I'm going to create another vec3d, which is going to be specifically for getting a viable home block. And I'm just going to set its default range to 10. And in that range, I'm going to go in the negative direction, and I'm going to go in the positive direction, and just iterate through it. And I'm going to do that multiple times, so I'm going to duplicate this twice. and add ending curly braces as well, and press tab to bring it out. And let's rename these. I'm pressing Shift F6 and J, Shift F6 and K. And finally, at the end of all of this, we're going to go ahead and do if world.getBlockID at the position that's given to us, which is going to be it's going to be x plus I and so on for each one of these, which is going to end up looking something like that. And in the end, we're going to do bblocks.bhive.id. So we're basically looking for when the bhive ID is matching the get block ID from the world. And then when this is finally the case, we can do home block is equal to new block position, and we're just going to go ahead and copy what we have here because we know that that's the block that we have as home. And we're also going to return the central position of that home block. So it's going to be I plus 0.5 plus x, and you're going to do that for all of them. And then at the end, let's just say that we didn't find anything in the entire attempt. We're just going to return null. Okay, so that's to get home, and this will populate that home block variable. And we can just query if home block is null, and that would obviously tell us that it is. No good. Okay, so the other thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to have a get flower position. And this getting the flower position is basically the secondary objective that we're going to have for the bee. So it's going to go home and it's going to go to the flower and it's going to go back and forth until we meet a certain threshold, and we'll modify the block variable for honey level until it is to the appropriate level to basically give us honey. So we're going to get in flower, and it's going to be a very similar method to this previous one. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this code, but instead of setting, we're not going to set a home block, but instead what we're going to do is we're going to have a vector or a list of vec3ds in an array list. And I'm just going to name it flowers, creating a new array list. Okay, and in here, instead of stopping at any point, I'm instead going to, so I'm going to first check if it is, okay, we're going to change the structure of this actually a lot. I'm going to get this to be a variable. So int block ID is equal to this. And now we're going to check if different things are it. And I'm just going to base it off of the vanilla blocks, and we're going to do block.dandelion. So if the block ID is dandelion, or I'm just going to copy this on over, and I'm also going to do a rose. Okay, and if either of those are the case, then I'm going to go ahead and add it into my flower list. And this is important for, like, in theory, if there were 3 bees going to one home block, then they all go for the same bee or for the same flower over and over again. It gets to kind of look ugly. So we're going to go ahead and do it this way. And similarly to this previous one, I'm just going to copy this into here, and that would be our target. And I'm doing it to the center of the block so that it looks more natural. Okay, and I'm going to check if the flowers.size is greater than 0. Then in that case, let's go ahead and grab a random flower. So we're going to return flowers.get random.nextInt, and random is built into entity, and we're just going to do it through flowers.size. Okay, and if no flowers are found, I guess I can replace it with not empty. Not is empty, but either way would work. And if no flowers are found, then we'll just go ahead and return null. And so that is how we find that. And there's another utility function that I have. So we really are going through a lot of utility functions just so that we can make our B work as expected. And this is because I kind of see the kind of end goal that we're going towards. And so we're going to normalize and multiply by 0.01f. And this is just to stabilize the gravity in the horizontal directions. So this is kind of like, this basically softens the x and z direction of velocity so that hovering looks more realistic. And this is also basically because the friction, there's like friction that's going on with these directions, which don't really get applied properly unless we go ahead and get it to be done this way. So let's go ahead and continue. Now we have just a few more variables to go through, which is private vec3d home. And these ones I'm going to be using as we go through. Okay, so we'll go back onto each one of these and what they mean exactly. But for now, we're going to override tick, and we're going to actually start on the actual functionality here. So really, you could put anything in here. Like for example, if I did x plus equals 1, every single, or 20 times a second, it would go ahead and add 1 to the x position, which obviously is probably not what we want. But what we will do is we're going to set up a variable of the distance that's tolerable for distance away from the block. And we will also set up a vec3d pause, which is going to be, because the position of the mob is just x, y, and z. So we're going to go ahead and create a variable for us to use easy comparisons when we're using our utility functions. And I don't want it to be all processed every single tick. So instead, I'm going to do age modulo 5 is equal to 0. And this will make it so that it's significantly less intensive. And what I'm going to do is every 1/4 of a second, we're going to go ahead and check if we have a home. And if we do not have a home, then we will go ahead and set one. Okay, and that's our first variable being used. Now, if we do have a home, then we have a bunch of functionality that we want to do with going to that beehive and going to a flower. So we're going to check if our progress counter is less than 0, which is basically its starting state. And if it is less than 0, then we're going to go ahead and go to our home. And after we go home, we're going to check, basically once we set the goal, we're going to check whether we're close enough to home. So if we are less than 2 blocks away from home, then we will go ahead and decrement our progress counter. And we're going to set our distance to be less. So this is basically making it so that we want to be inside of the flower. So basically when we have the progress counter inside of a negative state, we'll keep going into this loop, and that means we've gone from probably -1 to -2, and we're going to keep going down until hitting this bound. And in that case, we're going to go ahead and change something, which is basically the honey level. So we want to basically hover around home until we get the progress to be high enough so that we can actually end up giving honey into that block. So I'm actually going to set the bound to yeah, I think I'm going to set it to 10 just for testing. But I think that 50 is probably a good final bound that we want to end up on. But this is basically the negative state is going to be when we're at the home block, which is our beehive, and then the positive state is when we're going to be at the flower. Okay, so basically we know if the progress counter is less than 0, we're going to go home. And if we're close enough to home, then progress counter is going to go down. And once the progress counter is below the bound, which I'm going to go ahead and check next, if progress counter is below negative bound, then we'll go ahead and do progress counter is equal to 1. So now it's suddenly positive. And we're now going to do block state current. And I'm basically going to check or set the block state of our home block. And we're going to go ahead and get the honey level off of it. And we have to import honey level as well. And let's go ahead and import that. Okay, so we have our honey level. We're going to increment our honey level. And if our honey, to protect us from going and setting our block state to an incorrect number, we're going to make sure that our honey is less than a number. And since we're only incrementing upwards, we're only setting a new state when it's going up, so we don't have to check the negative bound. But if honey is less than 6, so any of the realistic possibilities for the block state, we're going to set the block state with notify. And home block is now going to be set with this new property. So honey level is now going to be the new honey amount. Okay, so this makes it so that we can increase our progress on putting honey into our block. Now, so we have the way to go home. We have the way to change the progress. Once we're home and we set the progress properly and we set our honey level, we finally are in this alternate state where progress counter is no longer less than 0. So we set the honey. So this is our one-off function that's called. And again, this is counted every single fourth of a second. So in theory, we have 10 fourths of a second at our honey block, and we're good to go to the next step. So that is what we are good for. Now, we have this case in which the progress counter is less than 0. Now we're going to check if progress counter is greater than 0. But something that we actually should do before that is, even if we don't have a home, we can simultaneously be checking for our flower. So down here, I'm going to check if flower is equal to null. So we can find a flower while we are finding a home. So flower equals get flower. And this is our earlier utility function. And if flower is not null, then we will go ahead and do our similar progress. So also something to keep in mind is that our home will never be unhomed, but our flower will be like we will want a different flower at some point. We'll check for a random flower again. So that's something to keep in mind when we're going ahead and setting it up this way. So if progress counter is greater than 0, which is the case when this is set here, then we are in search of a flower, which means we can go to the flower block and we can check if our distance to the flower is less than 2. And if that is the case, then we are making progress again. And this time, instead of going down in the progress, we're going up in the progress so that we can eventually reach our bound. And something else that we want is to set our distance, which is helping our float methods. And yes, so the next thing we want to do is if the progress counter is greater than bound, then we will go ahead and set progress counter is equal to -1, and our flower is now null because we no longer have that flower. And hopefully it'll just choose a random flower in the area again, and we will be good to go. It may actually be better for us to set the flower to null up here so that it's done after we go back to our home block and it'll be in that area again so it doesn't wander off forever. Okay, so with all of that done, the only other thing we need to do is we need to deal with the horizontal and vertical movements. So we have all of our goals set. We have distance to, we have go to, we go to home, we go to the flower, and we just need to do one last thing, and that is all the time, instead of just every fifth or every fourth of a second, we will go ahead and check if the progress counter is less than -1 and progress counter is greater than negative bound. So this is basically if our goal is set, or if if the goal is set on the other side as well. So if progress counter is greater than 1 and progress counter is less than bound. I'm sure there's some way to combine this. Either way, we will be gravitating. So this is basically when we are moving between them. And this makes it so that in the case in which I guess in the case that we are, in the case in which we are moving, we want to be setting up that velocity to work as expected. And also we're going to hover above the distance that we set before. So this distance where we have 0.5, this is when we're on the flower. And also here, when it's 0.5, this is when we are home. But in all other cases, we're going to have distance 1.5. So when we're basically moving between them. Okay, finally, between all of that, the only other thing that I want to do is instead of tick living, we never want to jump because it really messes with our variables. You can turn it on in the tutorial to see what that kind of does to your expectations of how they move, but basically it flings them up into the sky and they just hover in the sky, and it's really strange. So they are never going to be jumping. So that is another thing that we need to set. Now that we finally have all of this set up, we can start up Minecraft and see the glorious bee actions, which was a lot to say, a lot to do. But hopefully nothing goes wrong. I'm just going to create a new world so that I can have a nice little testing setup to see if this is working at all. So I'm going to grab myself a beehive and I'm going to place it down. And there's no flowers around, so I'm going to go ahead and find myself a dandelion. I guess flower is probably what it's called. Yeah, flower. And just place a couple of them right here. And I'm going to summon the bee, and hopefully he goes to the expected locations. So the bee he's next to the thing. and then he goes to the flowers, and you can see over here, honey level 1. He comes back, he puts it in here, honey level 2, and this is all sped up because I have set it up in such a way in which the events happen in a much quicker fashion. And then we're at 3, it goes back to the flower, and he comes back to the hive. It's a little far away. Okay, and he's going to a random flower as expected, and we are at honey level 5. I think he's going to keep going back and forth because I don't have any stop condition, but if I right click now, I get my bee stuff. My bee wax or whatever. What is this? Yeah, honeycomb. Okay, so I also don't think I have a way of resetting the home if it's not there, so. Oh, oh, okay, okay. My game just crashed. Okay, so what I gotta do, let me first check that bug, okay? So we are automatically assuming that this home block is here. But if this home block is not our expected block, then we need to go ahead and change stuff based off that. So if home block, or I guess if current dot get block dot id is not equal to bblocks dot bhive dot id, then we will set home equals null, or equal, yeah, set it to null. And we, in all other cases, then we will continue with the logic that we have going on here. So there we go. Okay, so this will fix that error case.